The rain fell steadily as Emma Foster drove down the quiet road leading to the lakeside cabin. Her wedding was only a week away, but instead of joy, she felt a deep restlessness she couldn't name. She should have been excited about marrying Ryan, a man who was thoughtful, loyal, and safe. But lately, she had begun to wonder if safety was enough. Their relationship had become more about habit than passion. She still loved him, but the spark that once made her heart race had dimmed into something quiet and predictable. When her best friend Mia suggested a weekend getaway before the wedding, Emma agreed without thinking too much. Mia said it would be a short trip, a few peaceful days at her family's cabin by Lake Ashwood, away from wedding chaos. "You need a break, Em," Mia had said. "No guest list, no dresses, no pressure. Just you and the water." Emma had smiled, thankful for the offer, hoping that maybe the stillness of the lake could quiet her thoughts. But when Emma arrived, suitcase in hand and hair wet from the drizzle, she stopped in surprise. Standing on the porch were two men. One she knew, Jake, Mia's older brother. He was older now, but still had that same charming smile, that teasing confidence she remembered from her college days when he'd make jokes about her crushes and lecture her about choosing better guys. Beside him stood a stranger, tall and calm, with dark hair and quiet eyes. Jake waved her over, his grin easy. "Hey, Emma. Long time," he said, taking her bag. "Mia's running late, stuck at work. But don't worry, she'll be here tomorrow. For now, it's just us." Emma blinked. "Us?" Jake laughed. "Yeah, me and Noah, you remember him? My friend from college." Noah extended a hand, his grip firm but warm. "Nice to finally meet you, Emma. Jake talks a lot about you." The cabin smelled of pine and coffee. It was cozy, with a large fireplace and windows that looked out at the fog-covered lake. The air inside felt heavier than usual, filled with the soft tension of new company. Emma tried to relax, reminding herself it was only for a night. Mia would arrive in the morning, and they would spend the weekend relaxing, maybe kayaking or hiking. She wasn't expecting adventure. She was expecting calm. Dinner was simple: pasta, red wine, and laughter that came easier than she thought it would. Jake told funny stories about his travels, while Noah listened quietly, only speaking when he had something meaningful to add. There was something steady about him, something grounding. He didn't flirt or joke much, but every time his gaze met hers, it felt like he saw more than she wanted to show. At one point, when Jake stepped out to take a phone call, the silence between Emma and Noah felt heavier, almost intimate. The fire flickered across his face as he spoke softly. "You don't seem like someone about to get married," he said. Emma looked up, startled. "What do you mean?" Noah leaned back, studying her. "You seem unsure, like you're standing in front of a door, but haven't decided if you want to walk through it." His words made her chest tighten. She wanted to deny it, to say everything was fine, that she was just tired, but she couldn't. Instead, she said quietly, "Maybe I'm just nervous." He nodded, eyes thoughtful. "Nervous isn't bad. It means you care about the choice you're making. But sometimes, nerves hide something deeper." She didn't know how to respond. No one had ever said it like that, not even Ryan. For a moment, she felt seen in a way that made her uneasy. When Jake came back inside, joking about the weather, the moment faded, but the feeling stayed. Later that night, Emma couldn't sleep. She lay under the thick quilt, listening to the rain tapping against the window, her thoughts spinning. She kept replaying Noah's words. He didn't know her, yet somehow he had looked right into the part of her that she tried to ignore. The part that feared she was marrying Ryan out of comfort, not love. In the morning, she woke early and walked down to the lake. The fog was lifting, and the water shimmered like glass. She wrapped her cardigan tighter around herself, breathing in the cold air. For the first time in months, she let herself admit that something inside her was unsettled. She wasn't sure what she wanted anymore, but she knew it wasn't this quiet ache. Behind her, she heard footsteps. It was Noah, holding 2 mugs of coffee. "Thought you might want one," he said, handing her a cup. "Thanks," she replied softly. They stood side by side in silence, watching the morning unfold. Emma glanced at him, noticing how peaceful he seemed, how his presence made her feel calm instead of pressured. She didn't understand it, but she liked it. "Do you ever feel like your life is moving too fast?" she asked suddenly. "All the time," he said with a faint smile, "but sometimes slowing down scares us more than rushing ahead." She nodded, understanding more than she wanted to admit. Before she could say anything else, Jake's voice called from the porch, breaking the quiet. "You two planning to spend the whole morning down there?" he teased. Emma smiled faintly and turned back toward the cabin. But as she walked, she couldn't shake the strange feeling that the weekend had just begun to shift, that something inside her was waking up. By the time Mia texted to say she was delayed another day, Emma's heart sank, not from disappointment, but from confusion. A weekend that was supposed to be a break was turning into something she hadn't expected. Between Jake's warmth and Noah's quiet intensity, Emma felt torn between familiarity and mystery, between the life she had built and the one she might still be searching for. The rain began again, gentle and rhythmic. Emma looked out at the lake that evening, her engagement ring catching the light. For the first time, she wondered what it would feel like to take it off. She didn't know it yet. But the next 48 hours would test everything she believed about love, commitment, and herself. And when the weekend was over, she would never see her life, or her heart, the same way again. The next morning came with golden sunlight spilling across the cabin floor. Emma woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of quiet laughter from the kitchen. She pulled on a sweater and stepped out, finding Jake and Noah already there. Jake was flipping pancakes, humming off-key, while Noah sat by the counter, sketching something in a small notebook. It looked peaceful, almost like a picture from another life, one without wedding stress or expectations. "Morning, sleepyhead," Jake said cheerfully. "We're making breakfast. Mia just called, still stuck in the city. Looks like it's us again." Emma smiled, hiding her disappointment. Poor Mia. She really wanted to be here. Noah looked up and said softly, "Maybe it's good she's not. You look like someone who needs quiet more than company." His voice was calm, almost too observant. Emma didn't know whether to laugh or thank him. Instead, she sat down and joined them, trying not to notice how natural it felt being there with the two of them. After breakfast, Jake suggested hiking the trail behind the lake. "It's short, but the view's worth it," he promised. Emma hesitated, but Noah nodded. "Let's go. The air will clear your head." The trail wound through tall trees, the smell of pine thick in the cool morning air. Jake led the way, cracking jokes and pointing out things he remembered from childhood trips there. Noah walked beside Emma, quiet but close enough that she could hear his steady breathing. Every now and then, their arms brushed, and she felt her pulse quicken, not from the hike, but from the strange awareness growing between them. At the top, the view opened wide. The lake stretched below, shining under the sun. Jake whooped and threw a rock into the water far below, while Emma stood still, taking it all in. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Noah looked at her, his eyes soft. "It is." She turned to find him watching her, not the scenery. For a moment, she couldn't look away. It wasn't the kind of gaze that asked for something. It was quiet, searching, honest. She felt seen in a way that made her chest tighten. Then Jake called out, breaking the spell. "Come on, lovebirds, let's head back before it rains again." Emma laughed awkwardly, pretending not to notice the way Noah's expression changed. On the way down, the sky darkened, and the first drops began to fall. By the time they reached the cabin, they were drenched and laughing, breathless from running. Jake handed her a towel, grinning. "Guess we're stuck inside for a while." The rain turned heavy, tapping against the roof in soft rhythms. They built a fire and Jake opened a bottle of wine. The afternoon melted into evening, filled with stories and laughter. Emma found herself relaxing, forgetting for a moment that she had a fiancé waiting at home. When Jake went out to grab more firewood, Noah and Emma were left alone again. The firelight flickered between them, shadows dancing across their faces. She watched him sketching by the hearth, curious. "What are you drawing?" she asked. He hesitated, then turned the notebook around. It was her, standing by the lake that morning. The drawing wasn't perfect, but it carried feeling, warmth. Emma's breath caught. "You drew me?" He nodded slightly. "You looked peaceful, like someone who'd forgotten to breathe for a long time and finally remembered how." His words hit deep. She felt her throat tighten, unsure what to say. No one had ever seen her like that, not even Ryan. She was used to being practical, steady, dependable. But Noah made her feel something softer, more alive. The sound of Jake's footsteps broke the silence. He came back in, shaking rain from his hair, smiling at them both. "You two look serious," he joked. "What did I miss?" "Nothing," Emma said quickly, closing the notebook. But her heart was racing. Later that night, when everyone had gone to bed, Emma stood by the window, staring out at the rain. Her thoughts tangled. Memories of Ryan's smile, their plans, her promise to love him. And yet, another image kept intruding. Noah's calm eyes, his words echoing in her mind. She whispered to herself, "What's wrong with me?" She knew she wasn't in love with Noah. It wasn't that. It was something else. The realization that she had been living her life inside safe lines, too afraid to question what she truly wanted. Noah wasn't temptation. He was reflection. A mirror showing her what she'd lost in herself. The next day, the rain cleared. They spent the morning cooking breakfast and teasing Jake about his terrible coffee. Everything seemed normal again. Almost too normal. But underneath the laughter, Emma felt the tension humming quietly, like music no one else could hear. When Jake went into town to pick up supplies, Noah found her on the porch, reading. He leaned against the railing, watching her for a moment before speaking. "You're quiet today." She looked up. "Just thinking. About the wedding?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Yes and no. I thought I knew exactly what I wanted. Now I'm not so sure." Noah stepped closer, his voice calm but firm. "You're allowed to change your mind. Life isn't about always knowing. It's about being honest with yourself." She stared at him, unsure how someone she'd met only days ago could see her so clearly. "And what if honesty hurts people?" "It usually does," he said softly. "But pretending hurts longer." The words lingered. Before she could answer, Jake's truck pulled up, and Noah stepped back, as if realizing the line they were walking. Emma exhaled, torn between relief and regret. That evening, the three of them sat outside by a small fire pit, the stars bright overhead. They talked about childhood dreams, love, and what happiness really meant. Emma listened, her heart caught somewhere between comfort and confusion. Jake told a funny story about his failed relationships, making them all laugh. But when Noah spoke, his voice dropped lower. "Sometimes we mistake comfort for love. We settle for peace when our hearts want fire." Emma's hands froze around her cup. The night felt heavier suddenly. She looked up at Noah, and he looked back, steady, unreadable. Jake didn't notice the quiet that passed between them. When everyone went inside, Emma stayed behind, staring at the dying embers. Her engagement ring glinted faintly in the firelight. She turned it slowly, feeling the cool metal against her skin. Tomorrow was Sunday, the last day of the weekend. Mia would finally arrive, and everything would return to normal. Yet as she sat there under the starlight, Emma knew normal was gone. Something had shifted deep inside her. Something she couldn't name, couldn't undo. The weekend wasn't over yet, but she could already feel it changing the course of her life. And by the time she left that cabin, she knew one truth would remain. She could never go back to pretending she was certain. The last morning of the trip arrived with soft golden light streaming through the curtains. Emma woke to the smell of coffee again, but this time the air felt heavier, quieter. The laughter from the day before was gone. She could hear Jake humming faintly in the kitchen, while Noah was outside chopping wood. For a long moment, she just sat on the bed, holding her ring, wondering why it suddenly felt so unfamiliar on her finger. She went outside, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. Noah was stacking the wood neatly beside the porch. His movements were calm and precise, the sound of the axe echoing in the cool air. He looked up and smiled when he saw her. "Morning, morning," she said softly. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep," he replied, leaning on the handle. "You?" She shook her head. "Same." There was silence, not uncomfortable, just full of things unsaid. The kind of silence that happens when both people know there's something between them but are too careful to touch it. She wanted to tell him that he'd made her question everything, but how could she? She was getting married in 2 weeks. Inside, Jake called out, "Coffee's ready." They went in together, and the rest of the morning passed easily. They cooked breakfast, shared quiet jokes, and talked about nothing important. Yet beneath it all, Emma felt like every minute was slipping away too fast. This little world they had built in the woods would end soon, and she didn't know how to say goodbye to it, or to what it had made her feel. After breakfast, Jake announced, "We should go out on the lake one last time before we pack up." Emma agreed instantly. It felt like the right way to end things. One last peaceful moment before returning to reality. They carried the small boat down to the dock. The lake was calm, smooth like glass, reflecting the blue sky. Jake and Noah rowed while Emma sat between them, the breeze playing with her hair. "Hard to believe it's over," Jake said, smiling wistfully. "This place always feels like a dream." "It does," Emma whispered. Noah looked at her, his expression unreadable. "Some dreams change you, even if they only last a weekend." Their eyes met again, and for a moment, time seemed to pause. The lake, the wind, the sky, everything faded until only that look remained. Then Jake laughed suddenly, unaware of the tension. "All right, lovebirds, let's not get poetic. Someone help me row back before I do all the work." Emma laughed too, but her heart wasn't light. She could feel Noah's gaze linger a second longer before he turned away. When they returned to the cabin, Mia finally arrived, waving from her car. She looked exhausted but cheerful. "I can't believe I missed everything," she said, hugging Emma tightly. "You guys look different. What happened here?" Emma smiled quickly. "Nothing much. Just peace and quiet." Mia raised an eyebrow but didn't push. She joined them for lunch, and the air seemed lighter again. Jake was his usual joking self, telling stories that made everyone laugh. Noah stayed mostly quiet, though, occasionally glancing at Emma as if memorizing her face. That afternoon, Mia and Jake went for a walk, leaving Emma and Noah alone once more. She was sitting by the fireplace when he came in. "Leaving tomorrow?" he asked. "Yes," she said softly. "Back to the city. Back to everything," he nodded slowly. "You seem scared." She looked up at him, startled. "Scared? Of what comes next," he said simply. "You've been quiet since the hike." Emma sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I'm getting married, Noah. I should be happy. But I feel lost, like I'm walking toward a life I chose years ago, and now I'm not sure if it still fits." Noah didn't move closer, didn't try to comfort her. He just looked at her with understanding. Sometimes love doesn't mean certainty. It means truth, even if that truth changes. His words made her heart ache. She wanted to ask him what truth meant for him, for them, but she couldn't. This wasn't that kind of story. When Mia and Jake returned, the light mood came back. They all played cards, laughed, and talked late into the night. Yet through it all, Emma felt the invisible thread pulling between her and Noah. Quiet, strong, undeniable. As the clock neared midnight, one by one, they drifted off to bed. But Emma stayed up, unable to sleep. She went outside, the night cool and still. The moon hung low over the lake, silver on the water. She heard footsteps behind her and turned. It was Noah. "I couldn't sleep either," he said softly. They stood there in silence, side by side. No words, no plans. Just the quiet understanding that this was the last time they'd be alone together. Emma finally spoke. "You've made me think about things I didn't want to think about." He smiled faintly. "That's what life does when you stop running from it." She turned to face him fully. "I don't know what this is, Noah. I just know I'll never forget it." He met her eyes. "You don't have to define it. Just remember it honestly." A long silence followed. Then Noah stepped closer, not touching her, but close enough that she could feel his warmth. "Go live your life, Emma. Don't let fear write your story. Her eyes filled with tears. And what about you? He smiled sadly. I'll keep writing mine. When she finally went inside, she didn't look back. But she knew he stayed there, watching the lake until morning. The next day, the cabin was full of goodbye energy, packing bags, folding blankets, the clatter of dishes. Emma helped Mia load the car while Jake double-checked the locks. Noah was quiet, helping where needed but keeping his distance. When everything was ready, they all stood by the cars, exchanging hugs and promises to meet again soon. When it came time to say goodbye to Noah, Emma hesitated. For a heartbeat, she thought he might say something, anything. But he only smiled gently and said, "Take care of yourself." She nodded, unable to find her voice. Then she got in the car and drove away, watching the cabin shrink in the rearview mirror until it was gone. The road stretched endlessly ahead, and the city waited at the other end. But Emma's mind was still back there, in that quiet cabin by the lake, in that moment under the stars, in the feeling of being truly seen. That weekend had changed her. She didn't know exactly how yet, but she could feel it. Somewhere inside, she had woken up. And though she was driving toward her wedding, a part of her knew. She was also driving toward herself. Days passed after Emma returned from the cabin, but the quiet she had felt there was gone. The city was loud again. Cars, phones, people rushing everywhere. And inside her, a storm was building. Her wedding was just a week away. Everyone around her was excited. Her mother checked the seating chart. Her friends planned the bachelorette party. And her fiancé, Adam, talked about their honeymoon in Italy. But Emma felt like she was walking through someone else's dream. She tried to focus on the details, the flowers, the cake, the dress. But every time she smiled, it felt forced. At night, she would lie awake, thinking about the lake, the smell of pine, and Noah's voice telling her, "Don't let fear write your story." His words echoed louder than the wedding bells that were supposed to ring. One evening, she sat by the window, staring at the city lights. Adam came up behind her and kissed her cheek. "You okay?" he asked, his voice gentle. She smiled faintly. "Just tired." He nodded and went to take a call, leaving her alone again. It wasn't that she didn't love him. She did, in her own quiet way. He had been kind, stable, everything she thought she wanted, but something inside her had shifted after that weekend. She'd met a side of herself she didn't know existed. Brave, alive, unafraid to feel deeply. And now she couldn't unlearn it. The night before her bridal shower, Emma went to her favorite cafe to clear her mind. She was sipping coffee when she heard a familiar laugh. Her heart froze. She turned, and there he was, Noah. He looked almost the same. Worn jacket, calm eyes, that steady presence she hadn't realized she missed so much. He noticed her too, surprise flashing across his face. "Emma," he said, walking over. "Wow, I didn't expect to see you here." She stood, smiling awkwardly. Neither did I. They sat together, and for a moment, neither spoke. The air between them was thick with things left unsaid. Finally, Noah asked, "How have you been?" "I'm getting married next week," she said quietly, as if reminding herself. He nodded slowly. "I heard from Jake. He mentioned it." "You talked to Jake?" "Yeah," Noah said, smiling. "He wanted to go back to the cabin in the summer. Said it wasn't the same without you." Emma looked down at her hands, twisting the ring. "It's strange," she admitted. "I thought I'd be more certain, but I keep thinking about that weekend, about how peaceful it felt." Noah didn't interrupt. He just listened, the way he always did, with his whole presence. Finally, he said softly, "You seemed happy there. Maybe it wasn't the place. Maybe it was because you stopped pretending." Emma looked up at him, startled by the truth in his words. "I wasn't pretending," she whispered. He gave her a sad smile. "Then why do you look lost now?" His question hit harder than she expected. For a long time she didn't speak. Then she said, "Because I don't know who I am anymore. I built this life, made all these choices, but suddenly it feels like I'm living someone else's story." Noah leaned back, thoughtful. Sometimes we wake up right before it's too late. The question is, what do you do with that? Emma wanted to cry, but she held it in. It's too late for me, she said. Everyone's waiting. The invitations are sent. Emma, Noah said gently, it's never too late to choose honesty, even if it breaks something, even if it scares you. His words hung in the air. She felt the weight of them pressing on her chest. He wasn't asking her to run away or stay. He was just asking her to be real. Before she could reply, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then sighed. I have to go. Work meeting. She nodded, her throat tight. As he stood, he looked at her one last time. Take care of yourself, Emma. And whatever you decide, make sure it's your choice. When he walked out, it felt like the cafe suddenly grew colder. She sat there for a long time, staring at the door, wondering if she'd just let the truth walk away. The next morning, her bridal shower was full of laughter, music, and flashing cameras. Her friends toasted her love story. Her mother cried happy tears. But through it all, Emma felt like she was floating outside her body. When someone asked how she and Adam met, she smiled and repeated the same practice story. How they met at a charity event. How he made her laugh, how they just knew. But inside, she was thinking of the quiet lake. The rain on the cabin roof. The feeling of being truly seen by someone who expected nothing from her. The night before the wedding, she couldn't sleep. She put on her coat and went for a walk. The streets were quiet, the air cool and soft. She ended up at the small park near her apartment, the same one where Adam had proposed. She sat on a bench, clutching her ring, and whispered, "What am I doing?" She closed her eyes and remembered Noah's words. Don't let fear write your story. Tears filled her eyes. She finally understood. She wasn't afraid of marrying Adam. She was afraid of never truly living, of settling for comfort when her soul wanted truth. By sunrise, she made her decision. The next day, guests filled the church, music played, and Adam stood at the altar, smiling. But when the doors opened, Emma didn't walk down the aisle. She had already written a letter and left it with her maid of honor. A letter explaining everything. Not about Noah, not about the weekend, but about herself. About how she couldn't promise forever when she didn't even know who she was yet. While everyone searched for her, Emma was already driving out of the city. The highway stretched wide and endless before her, and for the first time in years she felt free. She didn't know where she was going. Maybe to the mountains, maybe to the lake. But she knew she was going somewhere that felt real. She stopped at a gas station a few hours later and bought a coffee. As she walked out, she saw a familiar truck parked by the curb. Her heart raced. Noah stepped out, just as surprised to see her. "Emma?" he said, disbelief in his voice. She smiled through tears. "Guess I finally stopped pretending." He didn't move closer. He just looked at her, eyes soft and proud. "So what now?" She laughed softly. "I don't know, but I think that's the point." They stood there for a long time, saying nothing. Two people changed by a weekend that neither planned, standing at the edge of something new. And in that silence, for the first time in a long time, Emma didn't feel lost. She felt alive.